Yes! After just a couple of years of learning how to work on my car, I thought I was finally ready to take on the challenge of pulling up my entire engine to take care of a bunch of overdue maintenance. But that ended up becoming a much bigger adventure than I had have ever expected.
Oh, that's so bad. I'm completely confused now. Oh my God. Jeez, why does it have to be that difficult? Oh my, woo! It's really hard to squeeze this down while trying to pull out a connector that probably has never been pulled out. I think undoing these connectors on an old car is one of my least favorite parts about working on it. You can get stuck on something really silly and it's all plastic, so it's pretty easy to break.
And so with the bumper removed to make room for the engine crane, I just need to remove the hood as well.
As far as I understand, if I remove the nuts, it won't actually fall off. It'll be held in place with the studs, but of course it won't be secured. If that is not true and I take off these nuts, the hood will slide and fall into the windshield. Ah! Fuck, I fucked up so bad. I just don't want to bend it. That was a weird idea to do this by myself, but it's off.
And so with both of those parts removed, I now had enough clearance for both the engine crane and the engine itself when it comes out. So I moved on to disconnecting everything in the engine bay that seemed like it would probably need to be disconnected.
This is the throttle cable, and what I was trying to do is just remove the two bolts here to remove it from the engine, but that bottom bolt is starting to round a little, so I think I'm just gonna have to undo this adjustment and deal with this later. Oh, okay, that works.
And so after only a few hours of work, it felt like I had most of the work already done. But I was trying not to get too optimistic too quickly, because I'm sure there's gonna be something that I was gonna get stuck on soon enough.
Back in the very first video I ever made, where I rebuilt the shifter and tore apart the whole console to get to it. So I'm gonna do the same thing essentially today, take out the whole center console, all this stuff, because the transmission is physically attached to the shifter, and when you pull it, it's gonna fall in. Oh my God. Just realized I disconnected the battery and everything, and I forgot to roll up the windows. So I've reconnected the battery, just connected the window regulator. I'm gonna hope nothing goes wrong by putting in just the key in one click. There we go. Raising my windows. So I only had a couple hours to work on the car, but I got pretty much everything stripped out and disconnected in the engine bay for the most part that needs to be done. So there's a couple things left, like just yanking out the AC compressor and the power steering pump. And then the rest of the stuff is all under the car, disconnecting the drive shaft, the bracing, the PPF, and all the connectors in that area. Pulling this engine might be one of the easiest things I've done on this car. Not saying it's the quickest. This time last year, I changed out the motor mounts of this car with the motor still in the car, and that was a pain in the butt and took me a proper weekend. But this, I mean, I only spent 2-3 hours on it yesterday, and I'm probably almost about halfway through. Something I've been learning from this project is that, at least for me, whenever I have a challenge that I take on, if that challenge sits and stagnates for too long without me making progress on it, I think it builds up in my head to be much bigger than it actually is. So I've been saying for a year now that I want to repair my car, pull out the engine, and do all the engine work on the car, and supercharge it with no experience doing any of this before. But the more I just didn't have the time to work on it and it just sat, it started really building up to be this scary big task. And I am pleasantly shocked and surprised that a lot of this is more straightforward than I think I was anticipating. So that's pretty cool. Oh, that's so bad. Okay, I broke a plastic piece in there. Great. There we go.
And by this point, I'd got just about everything in the engine bay disconnected.
Two of the main things holding it back here are the power steering and the AC. Because the power steering is linked to this whole system connected to the steering rack, and the AC is connected to the condenser here, which is all charged up with refrigerant. And I don't want to disconnect those or have to deal with those fluids. So what I'm going to try to see if I can do is remove the serpentine belt that attaches them to the engine and drives it, and then disconnect them from the engine itself and kind of just strap them off onto the side of the engine bay.
But disconnecting those last two parts of the engine was turning out to become a pretty massive ordeal.
Yeah, this is definitely not as easy as I thought it was going to be. There's two things you need to do. Disconnect the tensioner bracket. Done. Disconnect the hinge bolt. Not done. It is very stuck, and I'm starting to round out the nut on the back of it. And so, my new plan is I'm going to hand rotate the engine by turning the crank, and then get it to where this hole lines up with the bolt on the front side here, and just blast it with an impact. What could go wrong? Okay, new plan. We gotta get the power steering pump out, pull the engine. To get the power steering out, we gotta get that bolt out. To get that bolt out, we need to rotate the whole crank, be able to line up this hole to get the bolt out, to get the engine out. To rotate the crank, I need to drop the sway bar that's in the way of the breaker bar here, so that I can rotate the crank, so I can line up the hole with power steering pump with the hinge bolt that's seized, so that... Okay, new plan. I need to jack up the car so that I can reach the sway bar, so that I can rotate the crank by hand, so that I can line up the power steering pump hole with the hinge bolt, so that I can undo the hinge bolt with an impact, so that I can get the power steering pump off to pull the engine, so that I can do a bunch of work. Jeez, this is really adding up. We're all lined up. Hey, turns out an impact is worth the money.
But after all of that effort, it seemed like there was still something else holding in the power steering pump that I had missed.
What? This belt is not coming loose. Okay, so what's holding the pump in now? I'm completely confused now. I undid the tensioner and I completely removed the bolt that was securing it to the engine, yet it's completely stuck in place. So you're not making any sense. Okay. Yes, okay. So I'm trying to figure out how to take the AC compressor out, and I don't even see a bolt. And I think it just occurred to me. See those little bumps? Like that. I think those are bolts. And I think those are bolts completely caked in oil. Jeez. This is nasty. And look at that, I found a bolt. There's actually 4 on the side that are way easier to reach. But remove that one, and I'm removing the back one now. Here. There we go. Maybe I was a little overambitious when I said this would be easy. All right, fully loose. Now the question is, how the hell do I get it out of the way? So like, where does this go? Everything here is gone. So the engine is almost completely disconnected at this point.
So with the power steering pump and AC compressor removed and bungee to the side, I just need to remove any last few things left in the engine bay before I moved on to working underneath the car.
I'm starting to go crazy. Every time I think I'm done, I keep finding more like hidden
You see this wiring harness here? It goes all the way in the back in there, and then also kind of snakes under here to an alternator. I disconnected all of that painfully, and then right above the alternator, there's a little bracket that it's clipped to with a little plastic clip. It's like one of these where the plastic pushes through, and the only way to undo it is to squeeze it on the back and then push it out. So for me to reach the back of that black wire, that clip, like, how do I reach that? Or I could just break it off. So I don't know how I'm gonna deal with that. So I just ended up ripping off that bracket so I could finally move underneath the car and start disconnecting the slave cylinder and then the chassis bracing that was in the way of actually pulling the engine out. Whoa. One of these bolts has been just completely broken off. Hell yeah. Ah. When I started working on this car, I did not know what an impact wrench was. And I've since gone 2 years after learning what an impact wrench is without one. And I did a lot of research and decided to get one just before this. And so I got a little compact, but I kept thinking, I'm going to hate myself if I start pulling out this engine and I get stuck while under the car. So I splurged and I got a bigger one as like the backup, the big boy. And I am so fucking glad I did right now because this thing was not cutting it. Oh, it's so nice to just have the right tools. Here we are now at the PPF. There are 2 bolts up front and 1 bolt up back connecting this huge brace to the transmission. Basically disconnected all these plugs and tucked them on top of. So I should be able to take off these 3 bolts and probably start moving the PPF and then seeing if I need to disconnect more of the exhaust to get to the drive shaft. Okay, so I can disconnect the drive shaft, but before I do that, I should drop the exhaust. And to drop the exhaust connection's at the back. Bro, if I brought the wrong wrench size, I swear. That's not a 12 millimeter. So with the bracing out of the way, I moved on to removing the drive shaft that was connecting the transmission to the rear diff, since I'm actually pulling the transmission out with the engine. There's 4 bolts like this around this drive shaft flange. And I got one off, and I need to rotate the drive shaft to be able to reach the other 3. I think I can get out of the car and rotate the back wheels, but the problem is, while I rotate the back wheels, I don't know if I rotate it too much or too little. I gotta spin the wheel and then get back under here and take another look and see if I spin it enough and just keep doing it again, again, again. Okay, all the drive shaft bolts are loosened. I'm not removing them so it doesn't fall yet, because the PPF is in the way. So to finish removing the drive shaft, I had to first remove the exhaust that was in the way, which also required removing even more chassis bracing. But after all that, I'd finally made enough clearance to finally drop the drive shaft out of the car. And I also had the idea to 3D print a little plug for the transmission to prevent the oil from leaking out, saving me the effort and money of draining and refilling the transmission when it already had brand new fluid in it. And so with everything completely disconnected, it was finally time to actually start pulling the engine out of the car, which is one of the most nerve-wracking things I've ever done on this car, and something that I still wasn't sure if I was truly capable of. But the only way to learn was to just give it a shot. And it was pretty exciting to finally see my engine slowly work its way out of the car. Oh, it's likely the, hold up, I'll stop. Okay, just gotta, you gotta tilt though. You can tilt a lot more now. It's almost cleared, I think. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's just the AC compressor on the ground. Yo! And so after all of that research, it was so cool to actually see the entire engine and transmission outside of my own car. This was kind of surreal. I've never done anything like this. I mean, it hadn't even been 2 years since I even learned how to do an oil change, and here I was with my entire engine sitting on the floor of my own garage. This was absolutely not anything I could have imagined I would have been doing with this car when I bought it. And, well, this is definitely going to be a day that I always remember. And with the engine out, I was starting to realize the scale of all the work that I'd committed to. With this engine out, I wanted to reseal it, get rid of all of these oil leaks that had plagued me for the last 2 years and caused many issues. And I also wanted to put a new clutch, new flywheel, and possibly even crack open the engine to change a couple of parts in preparation for a supercharger. That is a lot when I still kind of don't even know how some of all this works. But I didn't want to start overthinking, so I just took it step by step and moved on to disconnecting the transmission so I could finally get the engine mounted on a stand. And this is why I was talking about getting a bigger impact. So I'm basically trying to get to a bell housing bolt right over there. It's kind of an awkward place to reach, and of course the engine is suspended and swinging. Hell yeah! Yes! Hell yeah! Oh my god. Oh. Whoa! All right. Don't drop it. Ow! Don't drop it. Don't drop it. Woo! And with the transmission out, I just need to remove the clutch and flywheel before finally mounting it to a stand. And behind this flywheel, I found the first of many oil leaks I need to address on this car. All right, I think we are ready to put this on a stand. And just when I thought I was finally in the home stretch, I ran into a really weird issue. The part I have no clue about is how to actually get the engine stand lined up with this. This makes no sense. Even then, it's pretty far. I have no clue how to do that. You can see the legs are colliding. The orange thing doesn't go in the middle. Like it just, how do you get that to reach?
Ah, been there.
And as if that wasn't already a weird enough challenge, I found another issue on top of that. This is not making any sense. The bolts got from the guy who sold me the engine stand are way too long. This is so confusing. They only have threads on the last inch or so, and the threads end somewhere right there. So by the time this bolt goes fully in, there's no more like threads actually locking it to the engine. It'll just be a guide pin at that point. Same deal at the top, and even then I don't even know if this will, it almost looks like it would hit something, and I don't understand. I think I might need to buy new hardware that's shorter. I thought this was gonna be the home stretch, got the engine out, get the transmission off, and have it on a stand and be done, but that's not going to plan right now. Okay, went to the hardware store and got the hardware. The Miata is indeed a M12 bolt with a 1.5 millimeter pitch, and then you need somewhere around 70 to 90 millimeters long. And then you also need a bunch of M12 washers to space it out, because on the bottom of the transmission, the two bell housing bolts actually have a little tube that extends the distance between the engine stand and the engine, but the top doesn't. So you'll need to put in washers to basically shim that space. And so I finally got it. Let's see if I can at least get the engine stand little mount part mounted to the engine.
And then I'll deal with the second problem of getting the engine to reach the stand later. That's a problem for future. There's just too many challenges trying to do something like this, so one thing at a time, one problem at a time.
And just when I thought I'd overcome that first challenge,
I somehow bought the wrong bolts.
so I had to go back again and finally find the right bolts in a close enough length, and finally make that work with a few washers. So with that finally out of the way, I still need to figure out how to get the engine stand to actually reach the engine. Which took a little bit of trial and error before I came up with a kind of sketchy solution.
All right, what I'm about to do, I do not recommend, but I see no other option right now.
And so my solution was to basically just jack up the engine crane while it's holding the engine
God damn it.
onto some blocks to raise the height just enough to slip that engine stand beneath it. But it was pretty scary.
Oh, this is the move. This is the move. Oh, this is so dumb.
With that last hurdle solved, I just had to line up the engine with the engine stand before I could finally release it from the crane.
Oh, hell yeah. Hell yeah.
And so after all of that work, my engine was finally out of the car, on a stand, and ready for some maintenance. And with my first successful engine pull done, I'm finally ready to do all the maintenance and upgrades I want to do on this to prep for the supercharger. So subscribe if you want to follow along, and thanks for watching.